We begin this story with Matthew, who has had to face one of the most uncomfortable situations for a young man. Being the new kid at a new school where he knows no one. He is certain he will be the target of abuse because of his appearance. He also won't stop arguing with his mother, blaming her for everything. If she hadn't remarried, he wouldn't have had to move, losing all his friends just so she could have more sex with her new husband. On his first day at school, he immediately stood out by wearing a formal suit when everyone else wore casual clothes. The first to make fun of him was Nick, who actually wasn't so bad, and then offered to show him around the school. He also introduced him to his friend Ruby. She was kind to him too, and soon Matthew had already made two friends. But during lunchtime, he couldn't take his eyes off Teresa, the most popular and beautiful girl in school. The moment Matthew got the chance, he approached her to ask her out. It is at this point that we meet the villain of this story, Hector, Teresa's boyfriend, who quickly marks his territory and knocks Matthew to the ground, then mocks him. Just as expected, when the school day ends, Matthew returns home, trying to deal with the frustration of being a weakling everyone picks on. At that moment, his stepfather approached to ask him how his day had gone, and as you might expect, Matthew only responded, "Fine," just to be left alone. However, Ray noticed that his stepson had posters of boxers on his wall. Wanting to create a bond, Ray decided to give him a book about Ali, the greatest boxer of all time. At that moment, Matthew pretended not to care about the gift. He didn't want to have a relationship with his stepfather, but shortly afterward, he began to carry the book everywhere. One morning at school, Hector, knowing that Matthew is too cowardly to defend himself, decided to bother him some more. He threw juice on his book and his shirt. While they were mocking the poor kid, they caught the attention of Dan, the school janitor, who looked anything but a janitor. Dan pulled Hector and his friends away so that Matthew could continue his day in peace. But this didn't last long. As soon as lunchtime began, Hector caught Matthew watching the trials for the school's boxing team and started mocking him once more. Nick showed up to defend his friend. This sparked a fight for which only Nick and Matthew ended up facing consequences. At home, Matthew finally confessed to his parents what was going on and asked his mother for permission to join a gym where he could learn to fight. At first, his mother didn't want her son to become someone violent, but Ray knew what it felt like and convinced her to at least let him try out at the school. The next day, Matthew entered the gym and saw the young people boxing. His heart raced just thinking about being able to do that, and his eyes filled with excitement. Coach Howard told them that they would soon hold qualifying trials to decide who would be part of the official team. At that moment, Matthew saw Hector and his friend Joy enter the gym. It turned out they were the only ones already approved for the team. The rest would have to fight against them to prove their worth. Seeing this, Matthew took his things and headed for the door. There he encountered Dan, who told him that he would never conquer his fears if he always ran away. The blows only hurt for a while, but fear lasts forever unless you face it. With these words, Matthew returned to the line and faced Hector, who, as expected, gave him a tremendous beating in front of everyone. Matthew was unable to land even a single blow, just letting himself be pounded in front of everyone until Howard stopped the fight. When everyone left, Matthew was the only one remaining in the gym, and Dan came back to ask him what he thought he did wrong. Then he told him his story. It turned out Dan was a former boxing champion who had made poor decisions at the top of his game and now had to settle for that job. There, he committed to showing Matthew what he knew and training him after school so he could become someone strong, capable of defending himself. During the first days, Dan noticed that Matthew got tired too quickly. He wasn't fat. It turned out that the young man was a leukemia survivor, and his stamina was in the gutter. For a long time, Matthew had wanted to be a boxer, but his overprotective mother never let him near a gym, much less use gloves. She wanted him to be an accountant or maybe a doctor, some safe profession that didn't involve getting pummeled by other boys. Over time, the fruits of his training began to show. His endurance and lung capacity improved, allowing Matthew to go a full practice round without tiring. His speed and ability to throw accurate punches also improved a great deal, and soon he could be the rival Hector was looking for. One afternoon, Hector and his friends started bothering Matthew again, but this time he didn't plan to allow it. He accepted the challenge, and they went to the gym. However, during their fight, Hector fought dirty, and his friends helped him. When Matthew was on the floor, Dan appeared and stopped them, threatening to report the incident to the administration so Hector and Joy would be expelled for assault. Howard appeared and defended his boys, threatening Dan with getting him fired if he tried to deprive the team of their two best fighters. He argued that Dan was just a janitor, easy to replace, and that he had known the principal for years, so she wouldn't believe anything Dan said. To solve the matter, Dan spoke with Howard in private and demanded a spot for Matthew in the upcoming fight event so the kid could prove his abilities fairly. Confident that Hector couldn't be expelled, Howard agreed to give the boy a spot, but only if he brought a letter from his parents approving his participation, something very hard to obtain now that Matthew had returned home with a black eye. His mother couldn't be angrier or more worried about what he was doing after school. The next day, Dan gave Matthew the news. He got excited about the opportunity, but he explained the problem with his mother. She would never agree to let him participate in the event, even less now that she knew how dangerous it was. At this point, Dan told him that he couldn't hide behind his mother all the time. Over the years, he would regret not fighting for the respect he deserved. With just a few weeks until the event, Dan promised to teach Matthew everything he knew. They would do it behind his mother's back, and when the time came, he would know exactly what to say to convince her. But as the date approached, his mother hadn't changed her mind. So he decided to forge the signatures and submit the document. Then he went to Dan's workshop to train as always. But Dan wasn't there. Forced to train alone, the boy completed his daily assignment and returned home, where the principal was waiting with his parents. She had called his mother to confirm the permission, and all the truth about his fraud had been revealed. Caught between a rock and a hard place, Matthew confessed to his parents and the principal that he had been a victim of bullying from day one. Hector and his friends had turned his life into hell. He just wanted the chance to face them and earn the respect he deserved, and they were denying him that opportunity over a silly signature. Then he asked the principal about Dan, and she revealed that he had been fired for inciting violence at the school. Hearing this, Matthew left, leaving his mother furious at his attitude. But as far as he was concerned, this was his life, and he didn't want to live it in fear. Later, Matthew visited Dan, who lived on a boat. There, he apologized for causing him problems and asked him to continue training him for the event. Dan said he had nothing more to teach him. He had mastered all the techniques, and now it was time for him to go back home, make things right with his parents, and face Hector. The young man listened and returned home with a clear head. His mother, who had also been thinking things over, decided to let him participate in the event. And not only that, she would be supporting him from the stands. On the big day, Matthew got into the ring with the support of his family and friends. Even his father had traveled from afar to watch him fight. Howard got into the ring and explained the rules. 3 rounds of 1 minute each. The winner would be decided by the judges, and the boys would have 45 seconds of rest in each round. Once the fight began, Hector dominated the ring, landing blow after blow to Matthew's head, who kept his guard up. During the second round, Hector landed a punch to the liver, making Matthew recoil in pain. Luckily, it was the last few seconds of the round, and Dan and his father rushed to his corner to give him support. Dan told him that this was the kind of passing pain he had talked about. From now on, no one could take away his courage. He just needed to go out there and do what they had practiced because, in everyone's eyes, he was already a winner. During the last round, images of Hector mocking him passed through Matthew's mind, as if each one gave more strength to his punches. He finally managed to land a direct punch to Hector's face, knocking down the villain, but Hector got up before the final count. Because of this, Hector ended up winning the match by decision. However, in front of everyone, he offered his hand to Matthew as a sign of peace and recognition. Howard announced Hector as the winner but asked for applause for Matthew, who would now be the school team's main boxer since Hector would be graduating that year. The movie ends with Matthew as the star of the school, now that he has refused to bow his head and has fought for his convictions. And that's how this great movie ends.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.